Hi, Alex here. Welcome you to a new series of interviews with well-being practitioners, facilitators, and guides. Today, I'm interviewing Lara Kolesar, a friend, a gifted somatic practitioner, and teacher. I'm going to introduce her, and then we can jump right in. So for the last 25 years, Lara has been exploring and creating new ways to support the body and translate its intelligence through touch, breath, and movement. She developed Kolesar body knowledge method for Pilates instructors. She now offers her latest creation, the art of ecstatic touch, out of her passion for assessing the deep healing potential of the body when its trapped rhythms of response are liberated into intuition and knowledge. She has led international trainings and workshops, guiding people to unlock their somatic knowing through their sense of touch. Lara combines her expertise in Pilates, gyrotonic, anatomy, massage, dance, embodied sensuality, and personal development to remind people of their body's trustworthy wisdom. She's passionate about using touch and sensory intuition to remind your body through its innate, ecstatic expression of aliveness that it is made up of the same primordial force that fuels all of life. So, welcome, Lara.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. This is our first one, and so it's so lovely to have a friend and a friendly face. So anyway, we're all stretching these days.
Yes.
So I have had the great fortune and opportunity to work with you both in person and online. And I'm so appreciative of that, of the safe and grounded space that you engender in those sessions. Can you speak a bit about your approach to that? Like how do you, what do you bring to the party, let's say?
Yeah, I would say the main thing is slowing down.
That's a good one.
Right? This slowing down enough that that I can listen. And when I say the word listen, it's inclusive of my sensing. Like, so I'm staying open to becoming more sensitive to the field around me. And I want to, through my listening and sensing, I want to support that attention and awareness for the people that I work with, right? So that my own embodiment helps to entrain, helps to exude that, so that it helps the other be able to drop into a slower, more listening, more open and curious place.
That's beautiful. And let's face it, there aren't that many places that really engender that in a way. I mean, we're taught to look outside, watch social media, listen to the teacher, listen to the facilitator, all of the attention is out there. And even with meditating, it seems like there's like there's more of a goal in meditation where you're kind of aspiring to get somewhere that is different than where you are, right?
Yes.
So I so appreciated just the value of that dropping in to where I'm at, what's going on with me, and like what a gift that was. And so maybe you could speak some more about that connecting and aligning to that, like what did you call it, a primordial force or source, or that ineffable thing that gives us all life, right? How do you sort for that?
Yeah, it's so I liked how you spoke to that. And even there's many modalities out there, and there's that they're still using those modalities to try and get somewhere. And it's almost as if there is this there is this kind of belief system that I need to arrive somewhere to be able to be aligned with the let's say the divine, or the source, to be good enough to receive its goodness. And what I started to notice and realize is that the source is right here, right now, right? We are made up of it. We're made up of this aliveness, where we are expressions of nature. So since that's true, since that's the case, if we just turn our attention to what's here now. So even when I work with someone, I remind myself that all that is needed is here right now. So whatever is needed for the individual I'm working with is available in the space for that that they're in, but also in the space between us, right? There's this kind of field of connection, and even like right now, as we're doing this over the internet, and this amazing magical time that we can actually create a shift in a sense of distance and time itself, that we can open to something that can be palpable if we turn our attention towards it. And that means turning our attention towards our senses. And that could just be starting with the five primary senses.
Right. Right. And that kind of like sets up, I don't know, a lot of people talk about blueprints, right? There's the blueprint in the field, and there's a blueprint in the body, but there really is kind of something to it, right? There are these patterns that we shape ourselves in, and or are shaped from source, let's call it. And some of those are what we would call expansive or more joyful, and some of them are not so much. So how do you particularly kind of trace into those areas that people don't really want to go? Let's face it.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of things. One of them is that coming to first where there is availability and resource in the body, meaning just by being alive, already there is an amazing, incredible amount of energy that is required to beat our hearts, right? The electromagnetic, when they actually measure it, it is like, it blows your mind. Yeah. So even someone who might not be feeling well, who might be struggling with their wellness, their fitness, even the fact that their heart is beating creates this amazing electromagnetic field. So with holding that intention, I work with the person to find where maybe that available resource is. And that could be, sensing where breath doesn't take as much effort in the body. Where in the body feels like, even with their own touch, where do they feel like, oh, this is a place where I feel more at ease or comfortable? So we discover together where there might be a place that is resourced. And maybe sometimes it might be someone's earlobes, I don't know. It's like, it's first turning the attention to that just being alive it's connected to something that can create, birth planets. That same aliveness is the thing that also, use the word blueprint. It's a thing that organizes information into, let's say, a tree. And that tree is made up more than just itself, but also it's an ecosystem, right? There's this relationship to the animals around it, to the mycelium network underneath. So if we think of ourselves in that way, we too are these like ecosystems. And I think if we spend more time just shifting that perspective to sensing, being curious, like, well, how can I sense that? And we have this amazing capacity through our sensory, our sense of, which is our sense of touch, right? All of our senses are made up of that. If we turn our attention towards that, and sometimes it takes a little bit of like guidance towards that because we are so habituated to cognitive thinking, which has its purpose. But if we put our attention a little bit more to our sensory awareness, it's amazing how it can wake up our superpower of our sensing, our sense of touch, and aliveness, energy.
Yeah, well, it makes me think of, watching children. And I don't have a huge remembering of being a child, but there is something in that aliveness or that magic in just kind of not filtering, right? Like not having like, oh, that's, that happened to me and now I have to avoid that and da, 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 da. And then as adults, we're kind of in that, no, I got to avoid that. And I'm going to hold myself over here. And now all of a sudden my neck hurts and my leg and my back, like I'm just holding myself in patterns that are, the brain is just trying to protect you. It's just trying, that's what it knows how to do, is to
Right.
stop energy from happening in order to help you. But it's a little, it's kind of paradoxical in the sense that the real movement and the real healing comes when you're actually able to like almost access those. I had a friend that talked about them like as battery packs, like they were like stored battery packs that when they needed it, they could access that and then, move in a new growth direction or something like that. So does that seem in relationship to what when you're talking about this body wisdom and authenticity in that?
Definitely. Yeah, I like the word battery pack because in some realms, what they speak about, it's like really areas of, let's say, tension or discomfort is bound energy.
Right.
Right. And if we think about, so it's like when we have pain, discomfort, places we don't want to go to, it's because has a certain level of intensity, and we all have a certain like
Right.
threshold of capacity to be with intensity. And so, and here, that's the rub is that it forms out of protective mechanisms, like you said, which helps us, right? So especially when we're younger and we have this unfiltered, unmanaged parts of us, slowly the world goes, you've got to manage this. And so then, right, and we interpret that as meaning this is not acceptable. It's not okay because I want to be loved and received. So let me manage this part, which is part of the beauty of who I am. So these battery packs are resources to the aliveness of our expression. Yet at the same time, they're parts of us that we are holding down, suppressing, which creates discomfort, right? When we suppress something, it creates pressure. And pressure is something doesn't feel good to always be with.
Right.
But when we shift that perspective to that possibility, we can then say, okay, I'm feeling this pressure, this discomfort, maybe pain. How can I feel both the holding around the pain, but also the aliveness within it?
Mm. Yeah.
Right. Because it takes energy to hold. I'm sorry, go ahead. What was that?
I was just gonna say that's beautiful paradox right there, that we're holding and expressing at the same time, so that tension, that a sequestered gem in a way, is something that we can actually start getting value from if we're paying attention.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, again, also shifting. It's like remembering that we are nature itself, and that something that's helped me a lot is the remembering of everything goes through a cycle, right? Everything in nature has rhythms to it and cycles. And so one of the things that helps me come back to that is like, if I take my hand and if I explore its, how I can open my hand, right? I can open my palm and expand it. And then I can also slowly come to closing my hand. And then I can also give it, a squeeze and a close. Now, really right now, I can feel there's something can be satisfying between the closing and there's something that's satisfying about the opening, right? So there's something about, there's something that I can go, oh yeah, that feels good to stretch. And then as I move through, there can be a relief from that stretch, because at a certain point, if I keep stretching, I'm like, oh, that feels good to move and go towards a closure. And then that feels good to like squeeze and hug my hand. There's something about that. So everything in our bodies, our breath, our heartbeats is an expansion and a contraction. They're all about this spectrum. And so to remember that there can be something that I can receive out of the contraction. I can maybe move towards it and see like, if there's a pain, maybe I can go towards hugging it a little bit. And then seeing what happens if I try and stretch and open. And there might be in a vulnerable place when I do that. But then I am remembering that there's a cycle always. There's a rhythm.
Right.
There is a value to both closure, to going internal, to curling in, but there's also value to expanding and stretching. And there isn't like one is better than the other. They are part of a continuum. And I think that's for each of us as individuals, whether within our lives, we can be anywhere between that expansion, being more outward, to being more inward, self-connected. And I think what can happen is that sometimes we might make it wrong and we get kind of a little trapped around that cycle. Right. And that's when when you were reading about, I like to support people in like freeing up that rhythm of response. Right. And finding embodied ways to like engage that. Because I think we all have been a little bit we've all been managed versions of ourselves that traps this natural rhythm of expression.
Right. And I'm curious, what's your experience or understanding of the space between the expansion and the expansion and the contraction?
Yeah, that's a really, so in the space between, sometimes there's these places where our system, it's like, let's say, like even the metaphor or I was like guiding through this expansion contraction. Sometimes along the way, there's something there. Like I noticed as I stretched my hand, all of a sudden when I went here, all of a sudden there was something right here that if I pause, it's like a syncing up and like a syncing up of my movement with the aliveness of the energy. Because sometimes my movement might try and get ahead of the energy, or, right? It tries to push the energy.
Right.
So the space in between can sometimes be a place where we can pause to recalibrate.
Right.
Like I notice when I work with people sometimes, like after I've helped them find alignment, they come up to standing and they find a wobble, right? They go, whoa. And the wobble is like the recalibrating, right? I think it's like, I see people trying to control their wobble, like as if they shouldn't wobble. But the wobble is about our system finding that centering is a dynamic place. Right? It is like center is not like a fixed point. because every breath we take creates movement and shift and change. And the wobble, so that space in between, can be a place of like, how can I refine? How can I invite a receptivity to the shifts so that I stay receptive and open to the information that is there? And information can be simply like, like as I was just talking to you, I was noticing, so this one part of my spine, I was just holding a little tension. And I brought my breath down there, just kind of, and I see how you're kind of oscillating left to right. And it makes it so that we can include this intelligence of our bodies,
Right.
this internal wisdom, to the space between us as well, right? There is this space that when we're speaking to each other, it's like we're being inclusive of this intelligence of our bodies as we're sharing as humans from our their words and our understanding of each other.
Right. Well, there's a lot of, I mean, you were talking earlier about measuring the electromagnetic field of the heart, and it's basically, I'm going to mess this up, of course, but it's quite a bit stronger than the electromagnetic field of the mind. The mind only goes out like 3 feet, but the heart goes out kind of pretty much infinitely. They've detected it to a certain degree, but then it doesn't really stop there. It just keeps going. And so we do actually have this shared field. Like when obviously when you're closer to someone, or you're intentionally connecting, like we are right now for this particular conversation, there's more opportunity for that to kind of sync up and calibrate, and we all know this, like there's some people that we're around and we just feel enlivened by them, we just feel appreciative of them, and then there's other people where like, I can only take so much, I'm gonna limit my exposure to that person, not because there's anything wrong with them, it's just harder for me to resonate with them. So this seems to be like this quantum soup that we're all in. We could call it source, we can call it God, we can call it whatever. And so in your experience with your work, how do you kind of, well, harness isn't the right word, but how do you access that to convert this internal body struggle or this bound up energy, the conflict we feel, how is there something you do to feel like you direct that, or you just open the space for it to happen?
It's a good, well, so it seems always that from a lot of people is going through the process of first playing with this shift of perspective through actually engaging it, right? So just as I showed the hand. So the more, to connect to the felt experience of, let's say, plugging in, of, you use the word harnessing because it's already here. By engaging the, so these aspects of being in the body, which is like, we have our breath, we have our movement, and then there's the energy. By playing with those elements and turning the focused attention towards it, it starts to wake up the liveness, right? So I'll do things to help kind of turn up the volume of aliveness in my, the person I'm working with, or if it's a group of people I'm working with, I turn up the volume. So then the sensations are there. So like even right now, as I speak to you and I have my hands open, I can turn my attention to feeling the hum of aliveness, right? It's a sensation. And sometimes, people are trained to like question or doubt whether they really feel it or not. Right. So a simple thing we can do is we can turn it up a little bit by rubbing our hands together, right? we can just create friction. We know that through physics, we're actually creating heat. And that when we pause, we can feel something, right? You feel something alive. It might feel like static. It feels like bubbly. Everyone has a vocabulary for it. And as we connect our sensing vocabulary to that sensation, then we're actually opening to it. And if we then say, this is what source feels like right now I am feeling it. And even as I spoke those words, it's like it's sentient. It actually goes, I felt it turn on a little bit, like just by me acknowledging it and saying, hello there, source energy. It created like little shivers up my arm.
Nice.
So there is like, it is sentient itself. Like as I feel it, it feels me feeling it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just a one-way street that I'm just like feeling some kind of aliveness. That aliveness is also feeling me. It's also doing me. It's beating my heart. So as I'm engaging with you, this is how I would like, this is how to like harness it, is by unclenching and opening to this aliveness and acknowledging it and starting from the truth of like being in that open curiosity of like, wow, okay, you're alive. Okay. And then what naturally, what through the curiosity, what starts to come up? It could be a question. It could be like an acknowledgement of like, sometimes I can feel a little bit overwhelmed by it. And I might just say to it, like, gosh, so acknowledge that sometimes I think I shut down to you because I feel a little overwhelmed by how much information you're giving me.
Right. Well, I think also we're so taught to feel limited, right? We're contain your energy, be quiet, only talk like this, there's like, this is an acceptable expression. This is not an acceptable expression. And so we're like you were speaking earlier, it's like we as children, we adapt to that because we want to belong, we want to be cared for. We want to be part of the tribe, that deep instinctive kind of fear of like, well, if I'm left to survive on my own, I won't. So we're kind of in a new paradigm now, I think, though. And I think you were speaking to that feeling of it's a lot right now. There's a lot available and there's a lot happening. And, just kind of just on a strictly availability, like somebody was describing it to me the other day that there was, like it used to be like the fabric that we lived in was, kind of like closely held, like there was a tight weave to the fabric. And now what's happening is that the weave is opening up and there's all of a sudden these spaces and holes and places where energies and other consciousness and information and all that kind of stuff is more available because of what's generally kind of happening cosmically, all the solar flare activity. Our sun is actually moving into a different part of the galaxy. I don't think people really realize that the sun also moves, but it does. It's got its own orbit that it moves in. And this is, are you finding that when you're working with people now that it's kind of like a different set of issues that maybe you were finding in the past, or what's your experience there?
Yeah, that's I notice in my own life,
Oh, good.
right, that there is this shift happening. Like I'm able to watch the habits, right? So I do have, so as you named like this fabric change, I'm like, oh yeah. So before I was operating from a place, like when I first started doing body work and helping people to inhabit their biomechanics, it was very problem solution oriented, right?
Right.
Like a fix me kind of approach. And I was very much about like, I want to be a fixer, right? That's my job, is I'm going to fix people. And I have the answers. So that was the other thing. It's like, I have the answers. I'm the source of the answers and I'm the fixer. And through that, there was kind of a limit, because I could feel it myself. There was only so much time I could offer, so much I could even charge for it, like, or the perception of that it created a kind of a tightness around my own, my sense of feeling successful, I guess would be the word, right? And now something shifted. I have such a different perception of what that means to be successful. When I can feel so much, like I can feel like a shift in moments, that as if by just shifting my attention to the abundance of like the availability of the field around me, I actually shift into, I can right away, I'm like, I feel the feeling of success is here. It's available to me. Like, and it's a sense of like, it's connected to my sense of enjoyment, pleasure, satisfaction, feeling satisfied, but also feeling gratitude, even humbled, like being in the mystery of things. So now it's like, I come to sessions where like, it's like, I let myself be in the not knowing, because I know the knowing is here. And for me to be open to it, I have to let go of what I think and trust, like, whatever me is this instrument, it'll translate through me and through the other. So that's I think maybe my experience of what you're speaking to this like change in the fabric. Like, I do feel a whole different, like I'm living in a different paradigm myself. And at times I go through the contraction, and I go into the feeling of like the have tos and the not enoughness. I got to work hard to put myself out there, or, yes, time and scheduling. And then when I come back to my body, it's as a resource to bring me back into connection to the enoughness and it's like it's the more I drop back into it, it's like, it's a remembering, and especially when I engage with others. I'm noticing, like, even right now, as I have this conversation with you, I feel a lot more plugged into it than if, when I'm by myself. I mean, I can feel it by myself, but there's something extra special about when I'm in dialogue with others. The field seems to be extra alive in that. Yeah.
Well, it feels it, and it's so interesting to me in looking at, like, I'm kind of a student of cultural patterns and societal currents and things like that. And I think, for the last bit, I don't know, several hundred years or whatever, the narrative has really been the world is a dangerous place. And the people around you are not to be trusted, unless they're like maybe in your smaller little family unit or something like that. So there's been this like overlay of distrust in the culture and in our systems. And I mean, I don't watch the news, but the little snippets that I get every now and then, it's like, be afraid, be very afraid. And if you go through an airport, we are on alert, Agent Orange. Well, not Agent Orange. That's something completely different. But we are on alert, level orange. Whatever that means. I don't know what orange is. It's probably obviously not as bad as red, but not as good as yellow. Or but the communication is be afraid.
Yeah.
And I think with this, like, more possibility and like some opening in our connection with each other, and there's such a longing for that. People have really gotten away from that sense of communing communing with source and communing with each other. And I do 100% trust that part of that, let's call it healing or remembering, bringing back the members of ourselves to something, is this embodiment or this somatic awareness that, we've gotten so into this idea place, and to like drop into that. And I just so appreciate your friendship and your encouragement, and just who you are in the world, because everybody, we all need more people to remind us that it really is safe to be yourself, and it's safe to connect. And I mean, you want to, fear is an important thing. Fear is real, you want to, but you want to interact with it in a way of that I'm basically safe, and fear is information. I'm not fear. Fear is information that comes to me.
And as you speak to that, it's like the built-in mechanism in our bodies, right? So we have these mechanisms that come from an evolution of survival, right? And one of the built-in mechanisms is our senses. A big part of our senses are designed to help us survive, right? So even our simple senses of like being thirsty or hungry, right? Those are all what's called interoceptive, as opposed to the exteroceptive. Those internal sensings are what help us keep healthy. And so what's happening is that evolutionarily, those same interoceptive things are what help us be able to come into alignment with, like, as we were talking about, source. It's already built into us. And so it's the evolution of moving from survival to thriving. And we can still use those same built-in mechanisms that help us keep us in a healthy state, that helps us move us towards this authentic expression of who we are. It helps us be able to be in participation with the creativity, with the evolution itself, like that we are the expression of evolution through whatever inspiration comes through us,
right?
However great or small. It could be as simple as like, being in connection and care with someone could be part of that evolutionary expression, to someone who comes up with an amazing way to transform molecules of light into energy,
Right. Yeah, we're definitely living in interesting times.
Yes.
So again, I want to be honoring of your time, and also make this digestible as far as an interview goes. We could probably talk for hours on all this, and maybe we'll have another one. We'll do another interview with another level of topics or whatever. But do you want to say something quick about how how people can get a hold of you? I'll drop your website, which is bodyasmuse.com. I'll drop that in the notes. But how can people work with you?
Yes. Well, people can work with me either live. So right now I'm in Portland, Oregon. And so I work out of a studio, and I work with people one-on-one. I also offer workshops, as well as I've been now offering retreats, and I'm going to be doing a retreat in Europe, in the Netherlands, in the end of June, and it's called Dissolving into Possibility.
Ooh, nice.
So working with that same, like, how can we tap into that primordial energy and explore where expression comes from that. So I'm going to Europe. So I'm offering retreats, workshops, and all of that is listed on my website. I also do work with people online. During the pandemic, I found it's pretty amazing how much can happen through this, magic carpet ride of.
I love that.
So yeah, so all that is available through my website, and people can even do a little, like, they call it like discovery call, where someone wants to just have a little conversation to see if what would be the next step.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm going to bring this to a close now, and I can definitely feel some additional sessions of this coming on at some point. I'll be very, very interested to speak with you after your retreat. And I'm sure, because I mean, as a practitioner, we're always part of the process as well. It's not something that we bestow on others. It's something that we're in the midst of and partake of as it evolves. So
Well, thank you for having me.
you're so welcome.